Hey everybody, Lisa here, and it's 78 days, and today is day 16, the devil. So, I find myself, especially I think in the last 5 years or so, really asking the question of what is freedom? What does it mean for me to feel free? What is liberation? I mean, as a Buddhist, we talk all about liberating, saving all beings. We talk about the Buddha Dharma as a path of liberation. And yet, as I said many times before, I think, on this channel, I often, maybe I haven't said it many times, but I've thought it many times. I often inhabit a kind of Ten of Wands sort of universe, right? Picture the figure laden down with her burden of staffs, right? Her burden of wands, which for me is always like this emblem of the ways in which my energy rises in the world. I talked about this in my Follow Your Suit video. My energy rises in the world. I get inspired. I move forth. I have all of that chariot-like energy, right? I'm like, here's my direction. I'm going. I'm always full of projects, and when I use the word project, I really hear that etymology of the word project, throwing forward, that, and again, it's very wandsy energy. Wands is absolutely, even though I'm all heady and cerebral and airy, I got a lot of this fire in my belly, and so that Eight of Wands, like, those projectiles moving into the future, that is a lot of who I am. And then I end up inevitably with this burden on my back of the world that I actually have created, by putting my energy out there. And so, since my life so often feels like I'm bringing my energy, talents, creativity to bear, how do I do that and remain alive with a sense of freedom, a sense of liberation? So that question, and to me that's a very basic question in the mandala of the tarot. This is a spiritual tool, these 78 cards, which are asking us about choice, asking us about the fundamental dualities of this birth, death, human life thing, and is inviting us to imagine what freedom would look like. What freedom, not just the freedom of the fool who's unformed and still in that beginner's mind, wide open plain space, but the freedom that we all can inhabit at any point in our life, no matter what structures, frames we now inhabit. How do we have freedom? That's what the Devil card is about. And I think about the classic ways in which the Devil card relates to the lovers or love. The Guild Tarot does a really good job with this. So you've got the Love card, which kind of takes, the Lover's card takes the story of Adam and Eve, which is, in the misogynistic history of our culture, is a story of man giving into his baser female impulses and turning away from the spiritual, turning away from his divine heritage. But in the tarot, that impulse gets redeemed, and the way, going back to the Rider-Waite symbolism, but also arguably going all the way back to the Visconti Sforza tarot, you have the ways in which the woman can connect us, the female can connect us, the anima can connect us to the divine. So he's reaching toward that spirituality. She's aligned up toward the heavens, toward the angel. In the Devil, that alignment is reversed. So there's no pointing up toward the heavens. That triad is now a triad of bondage. So what is it that turns the freedom of choice into the bondage that we see in the Devil? And how do we inhabit freedom nonetheless? The card that I chose is a deck that I haven't worked with a lot, although I deeply, deeply appreciate it, and that is the Druidcraft Tarot. Every time I dive into the images, and especially the very careful discussion of the tarot and working with the tarot, Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gum's writing. I can't show you me and show you the book, but I'm just really impressed. The movement of Druidry, the sort of Wicca background, it's articulated beautifully. It resonates so beautifully with the 78 cards, and it also is really aligned to a lot of things that I think about through my Buddhist background. At any rate, so, they're lovers. This is my trimmed version of the deck. The coming together of the Lord and the Lady, of the male and the female, of the high priestess and the high priest. They talk about, in the book, about how the white stag is kind of the spark of the divine. But this coming together, this, earth-based faith, that there's no division between the material and the sensual, and between the higher and the spiritual. These things can come together in perfect union. But then the devil, you have Cernunnos, the horned one, right? And the point here is like, what happens after we give in to the bliss state that our body can bring us to? What happens when we throw ourselves into our lives? That sort of sense of oblivion and forgetfulness that can happen with the ways we live our lives. That it's not that the activity of our life is evil. Cernunnos is not at all evil. He's the sort of the spirit of the hunt, the realities of nature, the ways in which the hunt enables species to thrive by thinning out the herds and the flocks. He's not evil. But the power of the natural world, like, how do we reckon with that? How do we not lose ourselves in our lives? So what they say in the book is really good, and I will read it. And I will put on my glasses to make reading ever more functional and happy. Okay. Here we see an image of Cernunnos, the lord of the animals, the wild herdsman and hunter. Before him the two lovers sleep. Sorry, I'm like going after my cards here. Before him the two lovers sleep as the sun sets. The card represents the raw power of the instincts and of nature, and also the dangers of delusion and excess, but offers the potential for achieving both freedom and abundance. And that idea of freedom and abundance is, for me, exactly what's at the heart of all of this. It teaches us how to live effectively in the material world and without becoming trapped by the glamour and illusion offered by a world obsessed with wealth, status, sexuality, and violence. The card points to the dangers of overindulgence, of being obsessive, greedy, and abusive, and yet it also hints at the enormous power that is available to us if we can free ourselves of the thrall of the material and sensual world and yet still live both fully and creatively within it. How do we do that, right? So one of the things that they say is that this card is about the call to awaken to responsibility. This is the challenge presented by this card, right? So how do you awaken to the responsibility of your actions? The time of denying responsibility is over. Cernunnos calls us to awake. And in doing so, he offers us the potential for both abundance and liberation as we accept responsibility for our life and the way that we live it. The call to awaken to responsibility. So what happens if we think about the devil not as the card of bondage, but the card of knowing in the middle of our sense of unfreedom, our sense of being chained to our own impulses, to our own lives, lost in our lives? Like, do you know what I mean? Like that sense of, you make choice after choice after choice, and then you find yourself and you're like, I just think of the Talking Heads, this is not my beautiful life. This is not my beautiful wife. This is, how is this my life? I've built it step by step, I think, sort of, kind of. But how do I find freedom now in the world that I've generated with each action of my life? Each action, each reaction. And so in the middle of that sense of, I'm calling up my Rider-Waite, my digital Rider-Waite. In the middle of that sense of being chained by the very life that we have thrown ourselves into, we can find in that sense of unfreedom, we can find the call to awaken. This is my life. I take responsibility for it. Each moment is a choice. Each moment is a call to awaken. So hearing those senses of bondage as truly doors, gates opening, reminding us to step forth. It's our life. You know, this one precious life. It's ours. Yeah. So that's really where I am these days, right? This is my life. Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your practice.